You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 139 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me is my podcast partner in crime, Jessica Szilagyi.
Hi, Dave.
Howdy. How was your week?
Political. How was your week?
Someone asked if I was watching the Trump town hall. And I'm like, no, the Braves are on.
So,
wow.
Did you hear anything or see anything about it?
I've heard the news about it, about the moderator getting a confrontational, like not moderating.
Right. I didn't watch
I
any
saw
of
that, but...
Yeah.
No? Not even prep for the show?
No, because I knew you weren't going to prep for the show, so I was like, well, why bother? But, but no, I mean, my beef was more so that they scheduled the Trump and the Biden town halls at the exact same time. They were both at 8 p.m. on Thursday. Like, I just... If you're going to do that, it better be like a side-by-side where, you know, we get one question from one and then one from the other. Because, I mean, the town hall relies on the fact that you want people to watch what they're used to and what they agree with. I don't like that at all. Not a fan.
That's actually a brilliant idea.
Well, obviously. I am the smartest person in the room. I'm in my office alone, by the way, right now.
Alone, sort of. How is Stanley?
Stanley's great. If you're friends with me on Facebook, which, you know, Dave, you're on thin ice most of the time, but you know that Stanley got altered. And he was wearing what I love, Casey from All on Georgia, Northwest Georgia, she called it a boppy pillow. She's like, why is your dog wearing a boppy pillow? Because I put those in one of the inflatable collars on him instead of the cone. But he actually chewed that off of himself on day 9, I think. So he's back to his normal self. He can resume activities in like 2 or 3 more days. But he's a very happy boy, and so I guess he's mine now.
Well, I was reading your diary posts from Stanley, which doesn't make you look crazy at all.
If that deters people from reaching out, by all means, let me keep going.
And this is part of the show where you tell people not to reach out.
Please hesitate to contact me.
But yeah, he. As soon as you got that dog, I'm like, that dog's hers. Like, I'm going to find a good home for him. I'm like, yeah, I think he's found it. I can't do 3 dogs. I bet you're going to figure it out.
Well, we're working on it. I mean, it's going to be a little bit tough at times. And I talk about, you talk about, doesn't make me look crazy. Can you imagine when I go visit my mom and I pack up my car with 3 large dogs? Like, I'm going to have a trailer just to have for the stuff I take so that all the dogs can, you know, fit.
And in comfort.
Exactly.
This is Stella's traveling vest.
Well, I also thought about just getting like a horse trailer and putting, you know, all 3 of them back there, but I would never actually do that. But anyway, we've spent more time on Stanley gets quite a bit of shout outs on the show.
Because they're people. We want to give a big thanks to Big Daddy Unlimited, the sponsor for the show. They are the source for everything that goes bang and everything that makes what goes bang quiet. They have silencers, guns, ammunition, short barrel shotguns, short barrel rifles, and it is a direct source. If you buy a gun, you order it, you go down to your local gun store, pick it up, fill out your 4473, and walk out with your gun. If it is a Class 3 item, a silencer, a short barrel item, you do the paperwork at your local gun store that's licensed to do it, and then honestly, you have to wait a few months for the ATF to give you their blessing to own what you've already paid for. But big thanks to Big Daddy Unlimited. Did you hear that my senator or my congresswoman to be, Marjorie Taylor Greene, endorsed Loeffler?
How could I miss it?
How could I care?
Did you see the video of their endorsement or announcement of the
No.
endorsement? Well, I sent it to you.
No. No. No, I'm not. And they did it here in Paulding. I was busy. I think they did it on Thursday. And I was up in Dalton all day Thursday.
Well,
But apparently Thursday was a big political day in Paulding County.
oh, was it?
Oh, there was a fundraiser for the state delegation that evening that I missed. It was a beans and cornbread, which I like beans and cornbread. I didn't have time to make it. But but yeah, it was
cornbread.
all in the same park, I believe. You don't like beans and cornbread?
I mean, no, I'll be honest, I don't. But
Oh, man.
yeah, whatever. I like beans and cornbread more than I like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Kelly Loeffler.
Well, they weren't there for that event.
Of course they weren't. Kelly couldn't be bothered with beans.
Well, your comment, does this hat make me look poor?
I just can't stand the woman. I mean, and it's not like, I'm sure she's a good human being. I'm sure she's obviously a smart businesswoman. All those things are lovely. But she has absolutely no political ideology. And the fact that she is willing to accept an endorsement from somebody who is not even sworn into office yet, just because, like, it's going to generate a little bit more. And because Doug Collins isn't getting it, I just, ugh. I can't stand Kelly
At this
Loeffler.
point, at this point, she would take my endorsement. That race has gotten way uglier than it should have gotten. That race is bad. I mean, you hardly hear anything about Purdue,
Which
And I
is
know
also
he
dangerous.
And Ossoff, yeah. But you also don't hear about the other 18 candidates in that race. You only hear about Loeffler and Collins. And
Yes,
one of them is
unless you
probably
read
to be in the runoff.
allontgeorgia.com.
That's a thing?
No, the thing about, and I'm not sure, this is purely my speculation, but if I venture to say that David Perdue is not a huge fan of Kelly because she continues to call herself an outsider and conservative businesswoman and political outsider, and so now Perdue's emails from his campaign have shifted to the original outsider, which to me is him kind of throwing his, like, I mean, I don't think either of them are outsiders. And once, also, we've had the conversation, nobody who is an outsider is appointed to the United States Senate because they have millions of dollars to defend the seat in a special election. But and once you get there, like, you are part of the system. I don't care what your beliefs are. Trump is no longer an outsider. He might be like an outcast in D.C., but he's an insider. He knows everything that's going on right now. So, but anyway, I feel like Perdue's kind of slapping her around when he puts something out that says from the original outsider.
I don't know. Outsider is a popular thing right now. It's a very populist thing to go with. No, they're not outsiders.
So it's popular for everyone to be an outsider? A team of outsiders? A bunch of outsiders? Then you're still not an outsider.
Right. You're also not a political outsider when you're a billionaire.
Right.
I mean, that gets you a fair amount of access.
Absolutely.
So it's... she says all the right things, and somehow it is all the wrong way. And we've talked about it before. The donations, and like it's like she's an alien that doesn't understand how humans work. Like I know I'm supposed to emulate this behavior. I don't understand it. But at least she stopped showing the video on her commercials of her walking with the horse. Or whatever it was, FFA, when she was a kid.
And that's the nicest thing we have to say about Kelly this week. Next.
That's all I've got to say about that. Lindsey Graham really stepped on his pecker.
God.
Last week, we were talking about Trump and Michigan
Stop
Governor
it.
Whitmer. we talked about
Fix
how
it,
the
Jesus.
off the cuff comments are more forgivable than premeditated on a statement or that's typed. But Lindsey Graham said, "Hold my beer, hold my Ovaltine." The Republican South Carolina senator said during a debate turned forum with his Democratic challenger. You all right, Jess?
No! Well, this is a totally ridiculous show right now. Like, the whole thing is just a mess. Go ahead.
They all can't be winners. Young black people and immigrants can go anywhere in South Carolina, but added, you just need to be conservative and not liberal. Wow, Jessica. As if you didn't know because you typed it.
Yeah, and then, of course, you know, the clip got shorter and shorter, and it's viral. And it's still being talked about. You know, I think this was like 10 days ago at this point, but the Twitter was erupting. You know, racism and white supremacy, and Lindsey is sounding effing, not censored, but effing nuts like Mike Lee and Orange Mussolini. This man needs to be tested. And all the ads immediately, like on all the websites, you know, how the candidates will pay to have like keywords. Their ads pop up on keywords. So anything about Lindsey Graham right now that is positive is being inundated with ads about what he's doing and why he needed to defeat him. And I just thought it was I don't know. Does your off-the-cuff standard apply here?
I don't think it was him trying to say we mandate that you're going to be a conservative, not liberal.
Sure.
It certainly could have been done cleaner, and he has enough years of being in public service that he knows whatever he says is going to be taken out of context. He knows this. So with that, he should be a little more practiced at it. I would think, anyway.
It's a stupid thing to say. Like, he shouldn't, I don't think any political candidate should intertwine race or any identifiers and then follow it up with, you should hold this political ideology. Like, it's just, you're setting yourself up to be attacked, in my opinion. But
yeah, absolutely. Look, you can't commit unforced errors. Especially, and he's in a pretty good fight. He's in a pretty good fight right now, and you know he goes from being hero to a-hole all the time. So he's all over the place politically. He used to be called Lindsey Grahamnesty because he was supporting an amnesty bill. He's not my favorite Republican up there anyway. I'd be hard pressed to
No, he's gross.
To tell you which one is. Probably Paul. But you just don't give the enemy that much ammunition, and you don't give him the ability to fundraise off of something you said in a 2-second soundbite. It's just stupid.
When his opponent is black. So
right.
Just don't talk about race. Just don't talk about it.
Yeah, and there's no reason to. I hate identity politics anyway. And you know what? That's what would have been my answer is, you know, I despise identity politics. We're all Americans. We're all in this together. We all hold similar values, and what we need to discuss is where our personal views or our political views differ. But realize that we are all Americans, and we all hold similar values. We all want to raise families. We all want to be safe. We all want to have safe communities, and go from there. But instead, he allowed himself to get suckered into a race comment, like he hasn't been doing this for decades.
Well, and when you have been elected for a while, like that, stick to your record. Hammer your record. I did this. I did this. I did this. Just that's all you have to do.
Exactly. And be sure to call yourself an outsider.
Ugh.
Well, speaking of stupid, Savannah Mayor Van Johnson has his panties in a wad. A decision by Governor Brian Kemp to redirect CARES Act funding in hopes of avoiding an unemployment tax increase has outraged one of his most vocal opponents. So that's a very professional statement.
Well, I didn't want people to say we were bullying him.
I hate that word.
Me too.
I despise that word. Like adults saying that they're bullied. I'm like, no, you're not. This is what happens when you spend money you don't have. Huh? Imagine that.
So just a timeline of events. You know, a lot of municipalities got the first round of CARES Act funding that came from the feds, was funneled to the state, and then dispersed. And then there were certain things that the cities and the counties could use the money for, depending on the needs of their community. Like, some communities were hit harder, so they funneled it to help pay for the overtime that they had racked up with, like, EMS, because some counties were hit so hard that they were constantly transporting people out of the county and things like that. Others set up programs where they allowed businesses to apply for relief if they could meet the standard. We could talk all day about whether or not it was an appropriate use of money, but the fact is Congress passed the CARES Act. They gave the governor some discretion to decide how it was spent, and then the cities were told they would get round one and then round two. So everyone got round one if they applied for it through the state. But Kemp on Wednesday said, we actually, at like 5 o'clock, the office sent out a press release and said, we've actually decided to put this money into repaying the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. And we've talked about it on the show. I don't really recall how deep we dove into the issue, but I mean, we have been hemorrhaging money, and then they've been borrowing and all this, and the system is stable right now, but it's getting to the point where we'll have to borrow at a wild rate, or they'll have to raise unemployment taxes. So Kemp says, you know, the second round of money is actually not going to go to the cities. This is what we're going to use it for. He articulates that, you know, how he's going to do it, that it's a maximum of $1.5 billion, that it will save business owners $350 a year per employed worker. And Van Johnson loses his mind. Like, the press release went out at like 5:10, I want to say, and Van Johnson, his post was like, moments ago we received this and I am disgusted.
Yeah. Not only did he put out his own Twitter thing, which, you know, is partially a campaign thing. It got echoed by the city of Savannah, their official page. The city of Savannah was extremely disappointed to learn the change of plans by Governor Brian Kemp's administration with regard to additional disbursement of CARES Act funding to Georgia's nearly 700 local governments. And it goes on from there. I'm not going to read the entire statement, but to go from your personal page or you know your public page, but then to take that over and feel that the city needed to put a statement out. That's not the role of the official city page.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
So where the difference between one man's opinion of what's going on, and then swap that over to be, this is the official stance of the city of Savannah. There are a lot of business owners in Savannah that sure would be happy they're not going to drop another $350 per employee per year to keep up with the unemployment insurance.
Yeah, and you know there's a couple things here. First, you know, Savannah has been one of the most aggressive in tackling COVID and extreme in response. I mean, Van Johnson was in lockstep with Keisha Bottoms, basically, in the city of Atlanta. And $350, you're like, oh, well, that doesn't seem like that much. But think about all the businesses that are right there because of the ports, because of the tourism, all these things that have already been struggling and are still not operating at full capacity because of Van Johnson's ludicrous policies. And then on top of it, what really sealed the deal for me in just opposing it altogether was that I did a little background research on Savannah's round 2 funding and what they were going to do. And they had something like 430 applicants with $7 million, I think, in losses. And they were only going to be able to help 80 people. And I'm not begrudging them, or 80 businesses. I'm not begrudging them because they can't help everyone. But if you can help all the businesses that apply, one, I don't think that's the proper use of the money then, because, I mean, that's not equitable under the law. But also, you know, the committee set up by Johnson picks who gets the money.
Yeah, that sounds like a good old boy bonanza. You know, the people with connections will get the relief, and those who don't have them won't. Which again is not the proper role of government anyway. It wasn't the role of government to shut down these businesses, and it's not the role of government to bail them out. And I know we see this on a grandiose scale when you talk about airline bailouts and things like that. And then you see it in a microcosm in a place like Savannah. So I don't like any of it. One, unemployment insurance is not insurance; it's a tax
on the businesses. That's what people don't understand.
Right. It goes into the cost of employing people. It's a tax. If it was insurance, you could go and shop it out. You could call State Farm and get a quote on your unemployment insurance, and let the free market handle that. So it's not insurance; it's a tax. It is stolen from those who produce to give to people who don't or are no longer producing, with a bunch of strings that are attached to it. I mean, would it be so much nicer if it worked sort of like Aflac, where you could submit your paperwork instead of having to go to a government board and go do a hearing, whether or not you were fired with cause, or if you quit, or if what were the terms of or were you laid off because of lack of work? And I don't know if you've ever been to an unemployment hearing.
I have not.
I was on behalf of one of my employers, and I fired my secretary for stealing. She was stealing postage. And I know that sounds like little, but stealing is stealing.
Mm-hmm.
She asked me to mail some stuff for her. I looked down, and it was our postage stamp on. Our machine that was used. So I canned her, and during the appeal process, they actually asked me, did you ever tell her not to steal postage? So, are you kidding me? I shouldn't have to tell anybody not to steal. And she won. she got
what?
She won. They ruled as being fired without cause.
That is insanity.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's how it works. Versus if you could go out and buy your own, and I know a lot of people wouldn't, but that's on the individual. But I don't need to pay unemployment insurance on myself. How am I going to become unemployed? What am I going to do? Fire myself? There's also no risk pool difference, so we're all in the same risk pool with it. So, somebody who's in a much more volatile job field that may end up being unemployed because of lack of work or something like that is going to be a lot different from somebody who's a physician. Like, you can a physician, like, all right, well, I'll go from Kennestone to Wellstar or whatever, versus somebody who is working hourly at Target. It's a totally different risk pool. And if I was buying on the private market, I could buy something that's closer to my salary, not whatever it is, 20% up to, I don't know, $500 a week or whatever it is. But the whole system, the whole unemployment system is broken. Everything else government touches is broken. Everything's awful. Everyone's a horrible.
Absolutely, and Van Johnson is the horriblest.
He's up there.
Yes.
He's up there. He's a jackass.
These are our opinions.
He certainly is. No, that's not an opinion. That's a fact. Let me tell you why he's wrong. The long list of things, not to even include him wanting to pass anti-gun ordinances just for the city of Savannah, even though it's against the law to do that. In fact, when he was a councilman. So, voters are so suppressed this cycle that in addition to more people being registered to vote in Georgia than ever before, more people have voted this past week than ever before.
Are you shocked?
This is yeah, that the suppression's going so well. Government is so bad at things they can't even suppress voters. And I like your note here in bold. It's an absolute tragedy.
Yeah, I am baffled. Like, when I found out that we have over 95% of Georgians registered to vote, I was astounded. I had no idea it was so high. 95% of the registered, or the eligible population.
Right. 95, that's a big number.
It is. It's too many.
Well, I mean, Lowe said on the show before, I'm all about some voter suppression.
Well, voters, I mean...
Well, we have a total request for absentee ballots to date of 1.6 million. Total absentee ballots accepted by counties to date, 500,000. The daily number of in-person voting ballots cast on Thursdays at 5 p.m. was 131,000. That's huge. I mean, that's huge.
Yes, in 2016, obviously the last presidential election, 4.1 million Georgians voted, which, when you consider that now we have 7.5 million people registered to vote, I mean, let's just say that, for even numbers, that 7 million were registered to vote last time. Like, you're just over 50%. All these people, that's what I've never understood. Like, they claim there's voter suppression, but some of the people who claim that don't vote.
Right. Look, I've said it before, voting should involve crawling across broken glass. It should be tough. I've never been a fan of early voting.
No.
I think it's a recipe for fraud. Particularly in the primaries, because you may vote for somebody in a primary that drops out before that primary day, which has happened before to me. And I understand absentee. You've certainly got troops around the world that have a right to vote in their home state. You certainly have elderly who are infirm and can't get to the polls. But this mail a ballot to everybody, I don't like it. It's absolutely a recipe for fraud. We're moments from having stories about people going to vote, finding out that they're being told they already voted.
Yes, and we're hearing about these long lines. Oh, I stood in the line for 11 hours on the first day of early voting. Well, why did you do that, dumbass? I mean, why? You have 23 more days. You have a Saturday to vote. You can also get an absentee. You can get an absentee and drop it in the ballot box that they have, the secure ballot boxes that are such a big deal. I mean, we have all these things, and you chose to stand in line for 11 hours, and then I'm supposed to feel bad for you?
And what are the election officers supposed to do?
They've had unprecedented number of people registered to vote, higher turnout than ever. We've broken all the records. They broke the records on the first day, and people were like, oh, well, they knew they were going to have record turnout. Well, yes, they did, because more people were registered to vote. So I'm assuming they assumed there were going to be more people coming. However, first of all, you have to have poll workers. Did anybody volunteer? Did any of these people who claim voter suppression is real, did any of them volunteer? Second, we're in the middle of a pandemic and everyone's complaining about social distancing, and early voting usually, depending on the size of the county, they don't always have satellite locations and things like that, or expanded locations. You're talking about a system that is always going to be slightly behind the curve because it takes time to institute resources.
Right. And most counties only have one location to go early vote.
That's right.
And like you just said, you've got to be 6 feet away. So you can't fit as many voting booths in the same space. I don't... Look, I'm the first one to bang on government. I'm the first one to point at them and go, that's wrong. Yeah, that's inefficient. But I don't know what they're supposed to do. I also would leave. And I guess that's their voter suppression is, if I saw a line wrapped around the building, like, not today. Maybe
that's
I'll
right.
get there at whatever time they open tomorrow at 7 or whatever. I don't know how somebody has 11 hours to stand in line. I don't.
I don't either.
And I live a life of luxury. I'm not going to stand in line for 11 hours. It's the same thing I say about going to a restaurant. If I see a line at the door, I'm like, I'm not waiting to go eat. I'm fat. Feed me now. I think an hour is a reasonable time to wait in line for voting. 11.
Yes.
11 when you have that many days leading up to it. And I know we had the several debacles in presidential races where polls had to be kept open till 10 or 11 o'clock at night, or it may have been later. But I just don't know what they're supposed to do. It's a volume issue. I mean, we don't want to close off the spigot, but then we complain about how we handle the flow. So I don't know about that. Just quit bitching. Just quit.
Well,
like you said, you have so many other options of ways to do it. And I will vote in person. I will most likely vote on Election Day because that's what I do.
yes, and here's my problem too. We say that voting should be easier, it shouldn't be difficult, it shouldn't be this, it shouldn't be that. That's different for everybody. It's different for the single mom, it's different for the person who works the night shift, it's different for the person who works 9 to 5 or 12 to 12, or, it's just different. And we have all these accommodations, but voting will never be effortless. It should not be effortless. Like, people who say I shouldn't have to leave my house and I should just be able to log online and pay, then you run into other problems with security, with servers being down. God forbid you plan to vote online in your pajamas and you can only vote in a 2-hour window and the server's down, or your home internet is down, or your cell service isn't working. I mean, give me a break.
Or if you have Twitter running the vote and it goes down for, what was it, 2 hours last week?
Yes.
Which is forever in social media time. I couldn't post my opinion for 2 hours. Speaking of opinions, these are our opinions, and not necessarily those of All on Georgia, and certainly not those of any All on Georgia reporter not offering commentary on the show, and we certainly do not represent the opinions of Big Daddy Unlimited. Bulloch School System may be headed for a lawsuit with the Georgia Department of Health. Jessica.
This is a wild one.
It's the school lawsuit of the week.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yes. This one is really interesting. And, I live in Bulloch County, so I don't have kids in the school system, but I've been watching how this school system has been trying to institute protocols and all that crap. So basically, about a week and a half ago, the school system, or the school board had a meeting, they decided to unanimously stop quarantining students who had been exposed to somebody who had COVID-19 or tested positive to COVID-19, and if the students had been following all the protocols that put in place by the school, and if they had been socially distancing as expected and wearing a mask, they did not have to quarantine themselves. Because what was happening was the school system was sending entire classes home every time a kid tested positive. And I think in a 40-day period, they had 90 cases in the school system and 900 students and teachers quarantined. And that costs money and time, and it interrupts learning and sports and extracurriculars and everything. And there's people who will say, well, is that worth is anything more important than your life? Well, no, but if you're worried about your life that much, then homeschool or do the distance learning option. But anyway, so they voted unanimously. One person made a motion, it was seconded, the board voted unanimously, which almost never happens in our county with our school board. And then they posted on social media, and people were like, why are you trying to kill our kids? And it exploded. And so fast forward 4 business days, and the school system has a letter from Dr. Toomey who says that they need to immediately rescind the decision and keep in mind that they need to know that they could be guilty of misdemeanors for not enforcing the COVID mandates to quarantine. And then there was some more outrage, of course. Then it just turned into this, what kind of match. And so, to my surprise, and to the surprise of a lot of people, they actually penned a letter back to DPH and said, okay, well, why don't you revise your administrative order? We temporarily suspended our thing since it's not in compliance with the state order, but we want you to change it. And before we go into the discussion, since I just did that fantabulous summary, I do want to say this was an administrative order issued by Dr. Toomey on July 28th of this year. It has never been published on the website. It has never been distributed to the school systems. This was Bulloch County's first time receiving the order, quote, administrative order, that is not an executive order. It didn't come from the governor. It came from this bureaucrat. And I confirmed with some other school systems, they hadn't received the order either. So not that they weren't told the recommendations, but they weren't told that they were going, when they made this vote, that they were going to be in violation of an administrative order if they did their own thing. So,
and it does come down to money. They get paid for cheeks and seats. And that's the money that comes from the federal government. Sending whole classes home for 14 days is absurd. And I think that the interruption in learning is obviously more important than the sports aspect of it. But if one kid on the football team was exposed to somebody who had it, this is not testing positive. This is merely being in the presence of somebody who ended up testing positive. Doesn't mean they're symptomatic, just means they test positive. That you're going to take the entire football team, because obviously once one person's been, they've all been exposed to the person who was exposed. That there is you only have so many years to play high school football, and I'm using football because I was a football player. And it could be anything. It could be cheerleading, could be track, could be anything else. Well, they don't run track in fall, but you get 4 years. You get 4 years for your high school experience. And you're going to steal a year from these kids because someone on the team might have been exposed to somebody or might have been in the presence of somebody who tested positive. It's absurd. It's an absurd standard. This is one of the reasons that I was not happy with the legislature giving the governor carte blanche to extend his executive extend the emergency order as long as he wants, unless they go back into executive session, or not executive. Sorry, I'm too much in local politics. They go into special session to specifically revoke his emergency order. It was the Senate's bill that they pushed forward that wanted just to give him, like I said, carte blanche to put whatever emergency orders he wants. And that's not how our republic works.
Well, and another thing, too, is that, under the public health emergency, this is the first public health emergency we've ever had. So there was a lot of newness, and I am sympathetic to that. And maybe, I have no doubt that there will be, when Republicans are no longer in charge of the state house, that there will be some reforms based on what's happened here. And it does intimidate me knowing that Democrats would be in charge of that. But I also think that they will alter who can make decisions, because under the order, or under the statute, basically the commissioner of public health in a public health emergency is, she still answers to the governor, but she's right there and, just beneath him in power. And I don't think that's right. That's not the point. That's exactly what is the problem at the federal level, is that we have all these rules and regulations and regulatory actions that never went through Congress, and out of control bureaucrats running our lives and businesses and instituting fees, fines, and everything else. So I certainly don't support it here, but someone told me that I was being inconsistent because I supported local control here, but not with the mask mandates. But here's my thing. If Kemp had done this, I would say, I wouldn't like it, but I would respect the process and the fact that he's in charge and that's his authority under his executive order. My problem here is that a state agency head is overruling a local board that is actually constitutionally created, that was elected by the voters to represent the voters.
Well, and Kemp is held accountable. And one of the best quotes I ever heard about that was somebody who was a political appointee, and I don't even know what office he was put into, and he was trying to put some changes in this office, and someone finally looked at him and goes, You're a political appointee. You're here for 4 or 8 years. We're bureaucrats. We're here forever.
If that ain't the truth.
It is, but that's how the machine works. And you're absolutely right when you talk about Congress, who has absolutely punted their legislative responsibility. It was far easier for them to go ahead and pass, obviously I'm an air conditioning guy, the EPA's Clean Air Act. And then they don't have to do anything else. Now the EPA just does what it wants. And obviously it's appointed by the executive branch, but they have wide sweeping powers to cost you a lot of money, especially when it comes to my industry, where something that would have been a $500 fix 15 years ago is now a $10,000 fix, because the refrigerant that you have in your system is no longer produced domestically, and not imported for that matter. So that sort of bureaucratic nonsense that we see, it's easy to pick on the federal government for because it's so glaring. But I don't want a bureaucrat telling a local school board, "I'll put you in jail." I felt that them rescinding that 14-day quarantine for mere exposure, it sounds reasonable to me. We're not going to have kids gone for 2 weeks. Think about 2 weeks. How much was covered in 2 weeks? Now we're talking about high school and middle school. We're talking about kids who are changing classes. Well, how many of these classes are going to be gone? Do you even have enough substitute teachers to step in when a teacher was around a student who may have been exposed? It's an absurd standard. And like you said, once again, tell you why you're wrong. Parents had a choice, and they continue to have a choice. whether you do distance learning, do homeschool, get into some other homeschool co-op, something else that doesn't have their kids in the government school. So it's not like there are truancy officers throwing people in jail for their kids not showing up to class because they're afraid of COVID. That's not what's happening. Parents who are reasonable and want to be in charge of their own child's health had the opportunity to say, you know what, we're not going to have our kid going into a building every day. Which, oddly enough, everything I do increases the possibility of spreading COVID because I make the air cool and dry, which is exactly what this virus likes.
Well, another thing too, you kind of teed it up perfectly for me. The threat of the misdemeanor charge, if she doesn't, or if the board doesn't rescind their decision and all this nonsense, relies on the fact that a person who does not quarantine, who has been exposed or is tested positive, is out of compliance and a threat to public health if they don't stay home. But a school system can only say a child cannot come to school. They cannot say you can't go to Walmart or you can't go to work with your parents or you can't go to the ball field or anywhere else. They have no authority to do that. So she threatened a legal act that is not, it doesn't apply here. And I feel like that was done to try to throw her weight around, which was one of the main reasons I wanted them to push back on it. But also, the school system didn't just say, if you test positive, then you have to stay home. They said, if your child has been exposed, we're still going to let you know, we're still going to notify you, and your child's not going to be penalized if you decide to voluntarily keep them home in quarantine or until they get a negative test themselves. We are just not going to send entire classes home.
Right. And again, 2 weeks. Think about how much material is covered in 2 weeks. I mean, if you're in history class, you went from the American Revolution to the Civil War in 2 weeks. Not that they actually cover any of that anymore. But if we value education, then these kids need to be in school. And look, driving around Paulding County and passing schools in the morning, and they're at 50% capacity or whatever, is much more enjoyable for me because I don't have the traffic trying to turn into these high schools.
Yeah.
I don't have the lines of soccer moms waiting to drop their little darlings off at elementary school. So, I mean, selfishly, more kids staying home is good for me. Plus, when people are in their homes more, they notice when they're uncomfortable, and again, I profit off the suffering of others. So once again, the problem is government. And if we got rid of public schools, we wouldn't have this problem because it wouldn't be up to the damn state. So Jessica, you have a closing thought?
I do. We had an exciting week last week down here in Savannah, unfortunately, but that's not that far from me. And Eric and I went to the Spike Cohen event, who is the vice presidential candidate with Joe Jorgensen on the Libertarian ticket. And Libertarians get a bad rap because they sometimes are boring or awkward or don't really know how to, drum up the crowd. But this guy, okay, so I'm voting for Libertarians for president, but I know they're not going to win. But I'm really hoping that he stays involved in politics generally over the next 4 years, because that's another criticism of Libertarians is they wait until the election time to get going and organized. But this guy, he was on the stage for probably 15 minutes or so, and then he did a Q&A, which was unbelievably, open and direct and not staged, and questions that you could tell he was thinking through, and as he was talking through it, he was working through his ideology and how it would apply specifically for this person, and which was amazing, instead of having canned responses or people planted to ask questions that you're good at answering. But he was just really awesome. And the kind of person that makes you excited about, like, the promise of individual liberty and working to restore free markets and good government and minimal government. And so I was just really, it was a nice break from everything else. Unfortunately, it was on Monday, so then the week just went downhill from there. But I did a little article on it, and in the article is a video of him speaking. So if you're interested in learning about him just as a person, as a pundit, as somebody who's in politics, not necessarily to vote for them, I just think he articulates his positions really well. And I'll link it on the page and everything as well. But it just kind of gave me a little bit of hope for the Libertarian Party, too, because he was good at communicating with people.
Yeah, you know, a lot of the criticism that goes towards libertarians is deserved. Mm-hmm. But if you've actually found somebody who could espouse the true value of limited government, the problem with the Libertarian Party is it's steered by nuts as a party. You know, you can't just get into the limited government aspect of it and where, especially if you want to speak to Republicans, if you want to flip Republicans over to the side of liberty, is to talk about the true values of the party of Jefferson, the true values that our founders sat down and wrote on paper about how to limit the federal government. How the president was never supposed to be the most powerful man in the world. That office was everything to do about service, about a service to the country, not becoming the most powerful man in the world. And when you tell that story, it reaches people. But when you get people who are, you know, total anarchists that infiltrate that party and get the, you know, their message out, you know, open borders and things like that, and that turns a lot of people off. It turns me off. But if you have somebody who actually can communicate and actually espouse the values of limited government, and you know, Rand Paul was good at it, but no, I'm sorry, Ron Paul was very good at it. Not that Rand is bad, just Ron was a really good messenger.
Step back.
But Ron was very good at putting out the limited government message to people.
He was an educator.
Absolutely. And he brought a lot of Republicans around to where, you know, I think there are a lot of people who are like me. I'm a Republitarian. The Republicans don't necessarily like me because I believe in individual liberty, and the Libertarians don't necessarily like me because I don't support open borders.
But the nice thing about the Libertarian Party is it isn't. I mean, I'm not a libertarian with a capital L because I really truly do not believe in political parties. But the libertarian culture, as much as there is infighting just like all the other parties, is that you come there because you believe in individual liberty on X, Y, and Z. You don't have to agree with the person next to you, but just don't hurt them and don't take their stuff.
Right. Non-aggression.
Yes.
That's an amazing thought, isn't it? Well, that's a good one, Jessica. Mine is not as positive. The FCC will move to regulate social media after censorship outcry. And we've talked before on the show that I didn't know how long it would be before the federal government decides that social media is an industry they should regulate. That they're going to consider them like the phone company, and you know what? And to some degree, they have become the phone company. You know, they are how you get your news, but Facebook is owned by a guy named Zuckerberg. He owns it. It's his. He started it. And obviously, when they went public, there were a bunch of individual owners that own a piece of it. but it's private property. You don't have to use Facebook. You don't have to use Twitter. You don't have to use Instagram. It's not a necessity of life. It's not the power company. It's not the water company. It's in fact, everybody I talk to that takes a break from social media is so much happier. And there are quite a few people that I know that that operate businesses that they have social media for that business, but other than that, they're off of it. They don't interact with people. They don't get into stupid political debates with people they never met. But I saw this coming. I'm not shocked by it, but it is scary.
Absolutely.
Because now it's going to depend on, let's go back to which bureaucrat they put in charge of the FCC to decide how they're going to regulate how you and I speak to each other on a social media platform. So, on that cheery news, for Jessica Slodgy, for Eric Cumby, our editor, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.